Hello, Fantasy Managers, and welcome to another video and the first ever Fantasy Premier League podcast from Fantasy Football Hub. Although we've done video chats before, the most popular request that we get from our users is actually to do a regular podcast. So you asked and we've delivered. We'll be keeping things fairly simple in this first episode by covering 3 hot topics for the upcoming Game Week 13 before moving on to our own team transfers and captains. Before we delve in, we're starting with some brief intros into each of us. Although we'll be mixing up week to week, today I'm joined by the triple A's. We've got Adam HOPCROFT, Andrew Ferguson, and Andy Green. So let's start with you, Adam. You've racked up a very, very impressive 6 top 10K finishes and never finished outside the top 35,000. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you like to play the game.
Yeah, of course. So I've been playing now. I think this is my 9th or 10th season. I think previously, when I think back at it, particularly the first few seasons, it was just to have a bit of fun with the mini leagues. Got very, very competitive. And then as soon as I started discovering Fantasy Football Scout, Twitter, etc., I've become a bit more obsessive with the overall ranks. So yeah, I've done okay the last few years. I'm struggling a bit this year. So I think I'm about 375K. It's not quite going to plan. My last moves didn't quite work out, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute, or lack of moves even. So yeah, that's, I suppose, a bit of a quick intro. And I'm on Twitter, so HOPCROFT13 if anybody wants to follow me.
Yeah, I think we're all struggling a little bit this season. Most of all me, which we'll probably come to a little bit more later. And I'm sure my regular YouTube listeners will know that I've had a bit of a rough start to the season, but we'll get to that all in more detail next. But before we get there, we're on to Andrew Ferguson. So Andrew is a top multi-format Fantasy Premier League player. So he plays Fantasy Premier League. He also plays Sun Dream Team and Telegraph and Sky Sports Fantasy Football as well. So he's well versed in all forms of fantasy football. Got a very impressive FPL record as well, with 4 top 20K finishes in the last 5 seasons and a best rank of 750. So Andrew, welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Will. So I've been playing the Sun game and the TFF game for about between about 15 and 20 years. So I was kind of a bit of a late starter to FPL. I think it's my 6th or 7th year. I started playing Sky in that time as well. Improved year on year until last year when I had a bit of a hiccup. And this year I've noticed I'm 1 point behind Adam. I think the difference is I'm quite pleased with where I am, whereas Adam is quite disappointed. But I do think it's been a tough old season this year. I triple captain Salah in game week 1, which was quite different, but it paid off better than those who triple captained Sterling last week or the week before, wherever it was. And the wild card in game week 3 early as well. Generally a reserved player, but I try to adapt. I do think this year I've taken a few hits, and most of the time when I've taken a hit, I tend to have had a green arrow, including this last week. So, and I'm wondering whether the top 100K this year is going to be the new top 5 or 10K, because it seems to be, with all the more players, all the content. A lot of teams on Twitter look the same now, because of guys like Effonet, and everyone else. I think sharing, our knowledge and experience and things. I think a top 100K finish this year will be good this year. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, I think it's a very much sort of a self-inflicted one we're doing on us here. We're telling all the users our own tips. So it's I think we're all struggling a little bit this season, but it is a long way to go. And I don't know about you guys, but I've been in similar situations previous seasons, and I've still managed to get a top rank at the end of it. But I haven't come close to Andy's top rank. And Andy, this is your first sort of appearance on a podcast or a video, and just give a little bit of background to yourself. I'm going to start by just saying that you came third overall last season, which
Wow.
is all you really need to know. But apart from that, you do have a very, very impressive record of, playing the game for quite a long time with 4 top 10K finishes in there and multiple other top finishes. So yeah, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. As you can see, I've been playing this game since 2006-07, which probably says more about my age than anything else. But it was really an evolution from playing Championship Manager, pitting your wits against other friends and spending too many hours on that game. And, just the whole concept of building a team, finding players that outperform others. And I mean, obviously in terms of the record in 2012-13, I finished 525th. A bit of a slip up in 15-16, which I think was related to Leicester's title-winning season. Now that kind of feels a bit eerily familiar with this year, given that I currently own 0 Leicester assets, but we'll get onto that in a minute. And yeah, I've had 4 top 10K finishes. Obviously last year was, third overall, which a lot of people kind of tend to ask me why, what did you do differently? And actually, the way I answer it is I kind of actually watched less football last year because I've got a baby boy now. I actually, a lot of us are on websites like Fantasy Football Hub, providing a lot of stats. So I kind of compensated by using more stats last year. This year, obviously, that, like a lot of players, ourselves included, hasn't exactly been plain sailing. So I had a strong start, triple captained Salah Gameweek 1 again, like Andrew. But recently, I've kind of slipped back, and I'm currently around 400k. But I also play NFL fantasy for the last few years, and this year I'm playing Sky for the first time seriously, and I'm sitting around 1k overall. So that's quite an interesting game. It's very different than FPL in terms of the activity required, but yeah, FPL is still the focus for me.
Very interesting, and really interesting to see that both the Andy and Andrew went for triple captain in game week 1, which I don't think is I think it's very unusual actually for certainly players that have been playing a long time. Any particular reason you went for those?
I think so I think Milner was injured or banned or something, and Mane was injured as well. And you just looked at Norwich defensive stats from next year, and kind of allied that with wanting to get off to a really good start. And I honestly thought after half an hour I was going to win FPL because he was on a goal, an assist, and 3 bonus. And after that, obviously, it kind of stayed there. But I still think now, even now is the right move. And I think if you look back at previous years, I haven't hit a triple captain, I don't think, for 3 seasons. So to take 12 points, and get a good start, which it was at the time, I still think it was the right move. How about you, man?
What about you, Andy? I know that we both went for the triple captain on when Aguero got that hat-trick last year. So do you think it's the right call?
Yeah, I haven't been hurt by the triple captaincy so far, really. Normally I wait for the double game weeks to come. But just I thought about, the City team, and I thought, right, well, if we have a double game week, there's a chance that one of them might get rotated. Liverpool, obviously, was the risk, but given Norwich's defensive stats last season and the fact that Mane and Milner, Salah was on pens, they didn't have the attacking threat of Mane, obviously. So I thought, the stars are aligning here. This is a great option to go for it in a single week. Try something different, and I'm kind of indifferent about the result. I think it's 12-point game. I mean, you're going to think that some people, even with a sub opportunity, so if they double game week using the triple captain, then they end up with possibly a sub appearance, or maybe just two full appearances. So I'm kind of indifferent about it, but it's played now. Move on.
Yeah, to be honest, I think I'll probably take the 12 points now if I had the choice. So I think you probably played it quite wisely. Moving on to me then briefly, because I know a lot of my YouTube followers will know a little bit about me, but been playing FPL for quite some time now, coming up 10 years, and founded Fantasy Football Hub. Done okay, got 6 top 10K finishes with the best rank of 82nd. Doesn't come quite close to Andy's 3rd place there, but yeah, fairly decent record there. But this season, I'm struggling. It would be an understatement. been hovering around 3 million for quite a few weeks. I did have a half decent one this game week, which has brought me breaking into the top 2 million. So I'm coming for you guys. But yeah, it's been a difficult season so far. But I'm still hopeful that we can turn things around. And last game week was hopefully the start of an upward trajectory. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover 3 hot topics first. And the first one, I should say, just to start things off, that we had so many, I think it was over 100 comments in the end about different hot topics that we should cover. So thank you everybody who submitted a comment, because we are really, really grateful. But unfortunately, we can't cover all of them. We got loads and loads on covering differentials. And I know that certainly both the Andys, they do like a differential. So I thought this one would be a really good one to cover. And that one there from Wayne Lean, FPL, he's asking, name 3 ultimate differentials for the next 6 game week, please. So maybe answer Wayne's question, but also just talk about general differentials. Let's start off with you, Adam. What differentials are you looking at for the upcoming game weeks?
I think we're blessed this year. There are loads of great options in all positions, and some great value options. I think it's difficult. I'm not sure what percentage we're classing as a differential, but I think to go through Wayne's question, I've looked at it. So I think if you're looking at, I'll go for one for each position. So if you're looking at defenders, the one that I quite like that I've seen nobody's got is Johnny Evans. And the reason is so for those that haven't got Soyuncu or a Leicester player, I think he's 3% owned. And in the last 4 game weeks, he's second for shots in the box for Leicester after Vardy, which is quite a surprising stat with 6. And I think just before Soyuncu scored against Palace, you could see the corners and the deliveries were all going towards Evans. So I think Leicester's defence looked great. So I think at 3%, and I think there are some others which I'm sure the other guys might mention in defenders. Midfielders, the one that I really like from looking at today is Willian. And the reason for Willian is he's 2.9% owned. In the last 6 game weeks, he's averaging 7 points a match. I think he's got 42 points, 3 goals, 2 assists, so it might be the other way around. Plays 90 in pretty much every match other than the Burnley match when they were 4-0 up. And I think Lampard likes him because of his defensive work. And I think he was a favourite potentially Mourinho as well for that reason. And I think it gives the balance. If you're going to have like Hudson-Odoi or Pulisic in there, it gives a balance. I think we're talking about mid-price midfielders later on, but I think he's up there for, if you're comparing the other players, he's up there for both shots and chances created. So I quite like Willian. And obviously, he's a bonus magnet as well, which I think you've got other players like Martial and like that shy away a bit from bonus. And then for a striker, I think there are some that you could look at in the lower ownerships, but I'm going to say Firmino, and he's 10.7%. So whether he counts as a differential, I don't know. But
we'll give you that.
Yeah, the reason I'd go for him is a lot will be looking at triple Liverpool, and Firmino's stats have been okay and consistent over. I think he's had most shots in the box out of the forwards over the last 4 or 6 game weeks for Liverpool with the front 3. But what tends to happen, he's blanked about the last 5 or 6 game weeks. And anyone that's ever owned Firmino will know he's a very streaky player. And if you look at the start of the season, he had that. If you look at him probably this time last season, he went for a spell of 3 or 4 double-digit returns in 6 game weeks. So I think he could be one to look at. And when you've got like Salah's injury and Robertson's injury as well, I think if you're looking for a triple up, he could be one to go for. So I'd go with those 3. And I'm looking at potentially all of them as well.
I really like the Firmino shout. Actually, I've had him in previous seasons, and he's one of those players that always does well for me. You get some players which never sort of hit form, but Firmino is one of those players that always seems to come in. What about you then, Andy? What differentials have you got lined up?
Yeah, it's actually quite timely for me because I'm looking for one in the sense that I'm still holding, I'll get onto the teams in a minute, but I'm still holding Callum Wilson. So I've done a bit of work on my replacement for Callum Wilson this week, or this in IB. So really, I'm actually looking at some fairly low ownership players. The first one is Wood from Burnley.
Yeah, good shot.
He's only owned by 0.9% of players due to the injuries he's had. When I look at his stats overall, I mean, he's actually 4th overall in the last 4 game weeks, but he's only played 2 games in that time. His XG is 3.14 for the last, essentially he's only played 180 minutes. But yet he's got, an XG up there with Pulisic. He's had 10 shots, 9 in the box, and 7 of those shots were on target. So, that for me stands out, and that's the transfer. We'll talk about that in a minute. That's the transfer I think I'm going to be looking at. He's had 7 big chances in 2 games. So Burnley's fixtures: Watford away, then Crystal Palace at home, look quite favourable to me. Obviously, the third fixture is Man City home, which, who knows? I mean, on paper it's not a great fixture, but Man City's defence isn't exactly rock solid at the moment. The second one I'm looking at is Ings. Obviously got the goal last week. Owned by 2.9% of players. He's got Arsenal away, then Watford, and then Norwich at home. So he's last 4 game weeks again. He's had 9 shots, 7 in the box, and 5 of those were on target. But really, I've been talking about it on Twitter a bit this week. The ultimate differential for me this week, and I'm not too sure it really works in my kind of ideal team structure. What I'm aiming for in the next few weeks is Lacazette of Arsenal. I know people are, turn away in disgust with the fact that, Arsenal are just in disarray. The team seems to be not working together. But if you look at his numbers and the fixtures are just outstanding. I mean, he has Southampton at home next. Then he's got Norwich away, which is plum fixtures. He's got Brighton at home, the third fixture from here. Only owned by 1.7% of players. He's had 11 shots, all of which were in the box. And his XG is quite low, though, 1.08. So, for me, he's a great option if you've got the budget and it fits within your structure. The kind of target midfield I'm aiming for, it doesn't really work for. But, I'm looking at Wood this week as my kind of favourite differential.
Yeah, I really like that Wood shout, and YouTube viewers will be able to see our screen up there, which has got, he's top for big chances over the last 4 game week with 7, with Abraham coming next at 6. So he's got the numbers to back that up, and some pretty decent fixtures for Burnley upcoming. So yeah, I think that he's a good shout. Are you thinking of going him over Vardy then? Are you going to be hesitant for bringing getting involved with the Vardy party?
Yeah, I mean the whole Vardy XG discussion is probably it's a whole podcast in itself. I think there's been a lot of chat on Twitter about it. I've not got him at the moment, and I'm not averse to getting him. But the simple fact is that for me, he's way. If I look at his previous seasons, for example, he's always outperformed his stats, his XG. In last season, his XG for the whole season was 19, and he scored 18 goals. In 17-18, his XG was 15, and he scored 20 goals. This season, it's 19. Oh, sorry, that's Leicester. This season, it's an XG of 6.54, and he scored 11 goals. So, there's an element of outperformance there. And don't get me wrong, Leicester are playing amazingly well. They've got amazing fixtures. So that's one of the reasons I've avoided him for the moment. I'm not saying I'm not going to bring him in at some point, but my target structure is to go for the power midfield, which, we'll get onto when we look at the teams.
Fair enough. I do like that Lacazette pick as well. I think that Arsenal, they have some tasty fixtures coming up. Probably a little bit too much of a punt for me, but I guess we are on differentials. What about you, Andrew, then? Who have you got lined up?
We had 3. A couple have gone, but I'll touch on Willian. So I think he's a great option. I brought him into the under 10% owned team last week, and he immediately returned an assist. And I think to back up Adam's points on data from an eye test view, he seemed to be playing a lot more centrally than I've ever seen him play. He's a class act. He's got the number 10 shirt. He's on corners. He's on free kicks. He started the last 8 games, which I was quite surprised at, actually. It's only been brought off once. And the fixtures after City, they're home to West Ham, home to Villa, away to Everton, home to Bournemouth. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better 4 fixtures. So very low owned. And I also picked out Ings just to kind of back up Andy's points. He seems to have very quietly amassed, I think, 52 points, which is the same as TAA. And it's more than Son, King, Haller, Barnes, James, so I think if you'd have asked kind of without no innings points how many he'd scored, I'm not sure how many he would have guessed he scored above those already. So and again his run is away to Arsenal and then home to Watford, home to Norwich, away to Newcastle, home to West Ham. So very nice run against for the one player. And my third one, I've got a bit of a soft spot for this player because the season I did do really well. I had him in and he was a massive differential end over Christmas. It's David Silva. So he's 7.6 million. He did peak over 11% ownership a couple of weeks ago, but I think because of his injury now, he's back down to 8.6. He's got 61 points already, which is more than Mount, only 6 less than Sterling. He's got 5 9+ point hauls. And also, I think, more importantly, and it'll be interesting to see when we discuss our transfers later around potentially reducing our City attacking coverage, which, I think a lot of people have been talking about this week. He could be a very cheap route into the City attack, which will allow us to get all the players everyone wants at the moment. They're kind of, Vardy, Jimenez, Martial, which is quite hard to get if you've got, say, Sterling and Mane, for example, or even De Bruyne and Mane. So that's another reason why I quite like him as a differential is he chips in all the time. He plays nearly every game. And I think every game he's started this season, aside from one, he's returned in. So I think he's just one to have a look at. And that's it from me on that, Will.
Yeah, some really nice picks. I think that quite a few of mine have gone already, but the one that I potentially would look at, again, I'm one of those players which I'm not sure that we should be going for differential for differential sake. To be honest, I think that I sort of just go for the best picks, where irrespective of their ownership. But I can certainly see if you're looking to really jump up those rankings, then you want to go for those differential picks. But the one I was looking at is actually Doherty from Wolves. Wolves have a really nice run of fixtures, and for per start, his expected points over the last 6 game weeks is highest amongst defenders, and Wolves have a really nice run of fixtures. So a little bit of a last season pick there. He's still pretty high priced at 6.0, which is putting me off a little bit, but I don't know what you guys think of that one. What about you, Adam? Would you go near
I'd written down a few others, and the other 2 defenders I wrote down was Doherty and Stevens, and I think it's a good pick. He's got a really good understanding with Traore as well. So the Wolves seem to, obviously haven't watched the game the weekend, unfortunately, but a lot of Wolves' attacks come down the right. So the only downside is the fact that Bowley has got, is out injured. But I think from a defensive point of view, I don't particularly like their fixtures from an attacking point of view, but I think from a defensive point of view, Sheffield United, Bournemouth, Brighton, you can see a few clean sheets in there. So
they seem to have, when they've been playing this Europa League as well, a lot of people are saying, don't go near Wolves' assets there. They're going to start the Europa League as well. But what I've seen is that they've actually, last season they're quite attacking, but this season, maybe it's because they're playing the Europa League. They want to conserve a bit of energy. They seem to be playing a little bit more defensive, especially when they have those European games midweek. I don't know if anyone else has noticed that, or it's just, something which I picked up in the numbers. But I think with Doherty, if you're looking for a defender, then I think he could be an interesting shout. Again, a little bit pricey at 6.0, especially with the likes of Soyuncu and others around that price point. But I think he's an interesting option, and we all know what we can do last season. So potentially one to think about there. Moving on then, we're going to have a look at which Liverpool triple up is best. Now, this is something which I'm certainly interested to hear you guys' thoughts on, because I'm looking to triple up on Liverpool. Currently, I have Salah and Trent Alexander-Arnold, but looking to get a third one, potentially go Mane, potentially go Robertson. But what do you think? Let's start with you, Andy.
Yeah, I looked at this. Liverpool, obviously, Salah seems to be carrying something, but it didn't stop him against and City. And I tend to look last 4 game weeks, and Salah is really the best performer of the last 4 game weeks. And if you look at the kind of the season overall, Salah's XG is up there. Their fixtures: Crystal Palace away, Brighton at home, then Everton at home. They potentially look like pretty attractive. We can go on to the Liverpool versus City. I think we should probably bring City into this discussion, because if you're looking at bringing in Salah and Mane and possibly Trent Alexander-Arnold, or rather tripling up on that 3, then you're probably going to have to lose one of the Man City mids you have, whether it be KDB or Sterling. So, if I look at Man City fixtures, you've got Chelsea home, Newcastle away, Burnley away. Going back to the last 4 game weeks, Salah's got 14 shots, 10 in the box and 8 on target, the highest XG of those kind of 4 attacking players. Mane's up second with 9 shots, 7 in the box and 4 on target. Interestingly, Mane's XA, so the kind of expected assists, is significantly higher than Salah. But I think if you're looking for the ultimate Liverpool triple up, it's really Salah, Mane and Trent. I had Robbo pretty much all last season. I know there's been some news out there that he may be carrying, he's not been training properly, whether that's just to get him out of the international break fixtures, or there's maybe potentially something more seriously there. I think the safe pick and the form pick is really to go a triple up of Salah, Mane and Trent. But bearing in mind that you are going to be sacrificing potentially one City attacker to get that triple up.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Sterling's stats, actually. They're, in terms of like his shots on target, and obviously you need to have a shot on target to score. Over the last 2 game weeks, he's got 0 shots on target. And over the last 7 game weeks, he's only got 4 shots on target, which tells you a little bit about him and City's ability to get a lot of shot volume. And for me, that is a little bit of a worry, and I'm certainly considering a Sterling to Mane move. What about you, Andrew? If you had to pick 3 Liverpool assets, which way would you go?
The kind of points I think about, one of the main ones is you can only captain one of them, and I would only probably look to captain Salah or Mane if I had them above a defender. I currently got Mane. I do like, the Salah pick, obviously, but I think it leaves you very short elsewhere. And as I say, you can only captain Mane or Salah. Then just looking at the Liverpool defence, so Liverpool have only had 2 clean sheets this season from 12 games, which is obviously not very good at all. And despite that, Robertson and TAA are still scoring points regularly. If you look at last season's stats, they kept clean sheets in 55% of their games compared to 16 this year. And I suppose to Andy's point about Vardy and Leicester, maybe, I think regression is going to be imminent. And I'd probably go as far to say now that when Liverpool score, I don't think we're surprised anymore to see Robertson or TAA involved. Whereas maybe last year and previous years, it was, a kind of, oh wow, that's nice. We weren't expecting it. I think this year, I'm disappointed now if they're not involved almost. So I think for those reasons, I'm tending to err on the Robertson, TAA, and I've currently got Mane. Obviously dependent on Robertson's potential phantom injury, but I'm planning on bringing in Robertson next week, not this coming week. I don't think away to, is it Palace this weekend?
Yeah, Crystal Palace away this weekend.
I don't think that's potentially a great fixture. But after that, their run is really good. So I think that's my plan.
Yeah, they got a really nice run up until their blank game week. Have anyone's considering their blank game week, or is it too far in advance? I think it's game week 18, if I'm not mistaken. Adam, maybe you can help me out with that.
Yeah, game week 18. Yeah,
18. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had just on that. So I've had a quick look because we had some guys asking as well about whether we get rid of the players, whether there's potential for free hit or wild card. I think the only thing that stands out for me at the moment, it is a long way in the future. But if you look at the fixtures to me don't really lend themselves to ruining your team for. If say City were home to Norwich and, Spurs home to Bournemouth, something like that. But look at the fixtures. You've got Everton versus Arsenal, Villa v Southampton, Bournemouth, Burnley, Brighton, Sheffield United, Newcastle, Palace, Norwich, Wolves. Man City have got Leicester, Watford, Man United, and Spurs and Chelsea. I don't personally see anything real, which really stands out there as a reason to go and destroy your team. It is early, but I suppose that's my early observation on it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Maybe just make sure you've got a half decent bench then for that game week 18. What about you, Adam? Which, if you had to rank these your top three Liverpool players, put you on the spot here.
Mane is by far the best in my opinion, because I think because of the captaincy factor, I think he's head and shoulders above Salah at the moment on the eye test. I watched Salah play Villa. He was shocking. I know he was hampered by his ankle injury, but Mane was absolutely incredible. And to be fair, him and possibly TAA won him that game. And I think Mane in 2019, I know I've had a bit of controversy, a bit of pushback on Twitter on this over this year in particular, but Mane's been much better than Salah in my opinion. I think, so I'd say Mane first, TAA second, but I think it's close with Robertson. I think it's really close. The only reason I would say TAA is potentially the injury news to Robertson recently and the set piece factor. I'd put Robertson third, and then you could go Salah or Firmino. But I think that you've got to factor in the money. I don't think Salah's worth 12 million. I think the other thing I would say is I'm expecting Sterling to come back strong as well. And I think I thought against Liverpool, he was their biggest threat and a bit unlucky. So I'm not going to be doing the Sterling to Salah thing. I've possibly been a bit harsh on Salah. He's on penalties. He does have the ability to go through spells and get big hauls. But I just think with the form Mane's in, there's been very few game weeks this year in 2019 in particular where Salah has outperformed or massively outperformed Mane. And Mane, for me, is the man there at the moment. So that's who I would go for. So I know it's a little bit different. In terms of what I'm going to do, I'm probably just going to stick with Mane and TAA. I don't think I'm going to triple up on Liverpool. And I was looking at Robertson, but I think that injury, if you read what he said about he's trained once in, or the day before games, he's really concerning. And so was just some of the stuff about Salah, his ankle injury. So with their fixtures, because we've got some midweek games, I believe, coming up in the Premier League. So there's a lot of games coming up thick and fast this time of the year before they fly off to Qatar. So I will probably stick with two. I think the other reason is I'm tempted to look at a 5.5 million defender and a 7.5 million midfielder versus Robertson and the other way around, if that makes sense. That's my thought because I love the 7 to 8 million midfield bracket's brilliant. And I think someone like Chilwell won't do much worse than Robertson. That's how I'm seeing it at the moment. It could all change. I must admit, I have been impressed with Robertson this season, and it was originally in my plans until I saw all the news about his ankle, because I just don't think that bodes well for loads of consecutive games.
So you're likely to go with probably just the double up then?
Yeah, I think there's loads of value elsewhere, and obviously it will give me a bit of an advantage in that game week 18. So that's my plans at the moment, anyway.
Yeah, well, if you look at, I had a look at Sterling stats as well, and just what's been happening with him, because one of the people are asking, does he not? Some of the Twitter questions were, does he not play well with Aguero? Does he not play well with Jesus? And I had a look. My kind of eye test suggested that he performs better when Mendy's on the pitch. He kind of gets more ability to come into the box. And if you look at Mendy only played 2 games and then he was out of the team again. During those 2 games, Sterling had 8 shots in the box, only 1 on target. But, his XG was over 1 for those 2 games, 1.22. And without Mendy, in the last 2 games, I know one of them was against Liverpool, of course, but he only had 4 shots in the box. And his XG was significant, and his XA were significantly lower. So for me, the Sterling, I agree with Adam. I think he's going to pick up. Even Chelsea at home potentially could be a bit of a goal fest. I think really it does require Mendy to come back into that team. Now, given that Liverpool result, I think Pep might be looking at bringing Mendy back in, assuming he's fit.
I think that's a good point, Andy. I think the one thing I'd mention on Sterling, I tweeted it earlier in the week, if you look at penalty box touches for the last, I think it's 4 or 6, he's got 70. I can't remember if it was 4 or 6 game weeks, but he got 70. He's more than double the next person. I just think it just hasn't quite happened to him. He had that headed chance against Liverpool early on. He's missed a lot of chances. And actually, stats compared to last year, someone posted earlier, he's so far ahead of them. I just think it'll start coming together at some point.
I agree. And I think that, you mentioned that thing about Mendy, Andy. I've heard that argument. To be honest, Mendy didn't play the whole of last season. Sterling absolutely smashed it. So I don't completely buy into that. But nevertheless, I do think that Mendy certainly helps the team in general. With it certainly helps the team in general from an attacking point of view. So he can't hurt. But yeah, I do still like Sterling, and it is, at the end of the day, I know they lost against Liverpool, but City are still probably the best attacking team in the league. Maybe Liverpool can challenge them on that front, but they're going to score a lot of goals, aren't they? And Sterling's going to be key to a lot of those goals. So I think that Sterling is going to be a great pick going forwards. And if I had to drop one City asset, I probably prefer to drop De Bruyne. At the moment, I can't get to that unless I go with moving out Sterling. But yeah, to be honest, if I had to choose between the two of them, I'd probably go with De Bruyne. I don't know what you guys think about
that. I was thinking exactly the same. The only thing that is over Sterling, and it's like the Diego Costa factor, is those 4 yellow cards, which hopefully he'll tactically get one in, so he misses one of the cup competitions. But
I'm sure Pep will give a cheeky whisper into his ear, no doubt.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and KDB's got Rodrigo back now, so there's potential that he could start, or advancing a bit further than he has been recently. So
that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's risky to lose any player like Sterling or De Bruyne, but that's the decisions you make, I guess, as a fancy manager. I do think that's a good point, though, of Rodrigo coming back. Okay, let's move on then. So mid-price midfielders, we got loads and loads of questions on these as well. So I just pulled out one from Ryan here. If you were to choose between Martial and Pulisic, whom would you rather? Considering Pulisic will face a challenge from Callum Hudson-Odoi, Mount, and also Frank Lampard has fit midfielders in Kante, Jorginho, and Kovacic. So that I think we're generally going to talk about mid-price midfielders in this topic. So also help Ryan answer his question. But we've got for shots inside the box over the last 4 game weeks, Pulisic coming out top with 13 shots inside the box over the last 6 game weeks. Adam's pick there, and Andrew's actually, Willian coming in with 8 picks, and he's arguably more nailed on in that Chelsea side. So which one of those Chelsea assets do you go for? Then you've got all the Leicester assets, the Leicester picks. I think there's some great midfield options there. You've got Perez, you've got Tielemans, you've got Maddison. Interestingly, their numbers aren't as strong, but, Leicester are playing really well, and all of those look like they're in a good bit of form right now. And then you've also got Martial, which a lot of people are talking about. And of course, one that people are looking to get rid of is Mason Mount, myself included. So lots to go over there. Andrew, why don't you start us off?
Yes, I think my concern with Pulisic is obviously his minutes, but it reminds me a bit of last year where we kept waiting for Sterling and Alexander-Arnold to have their rest and to get dropped and get rotated, and it never happened. And because of that, I wasn't on Sterling and Thierry much last year, and that kind of killed my rank. So while he's probably a bit too much of a punt for me, I do think he is a really good option. To answer the question, I prefer Martial. So I think Martial, he started 6 games. He's returned in 5. The fixtures are good. He's more nailed. So I suppose that's that question. The one I'm actually looking at for the next few games is probably Maddison. Just looking at the way Leicester play, watched them against Arsenal. Maddison was just very advanced. I know this stat we're looking at now is shots inside the box, but for Maddison, you could add shots outside the box as well, and corners and crosses as well. He's just involved in everything. So I think Maddison is the one I'm looking at with those, probably the expensive mount. But I've got to be honest, all those players, depending on what you're looking for from a price point, from an ownership view, I think they're all really good picks. But I think Maddison, Martial, and maybe Willian, kind of a 1, 2, 3 there out of that list there for me.
Interesting, very interesting. What about you, Andy?
Well, I mean, these are the two players I'm going to be looking to bring in over the next few weeks. I mean, they're both in outstanding form. Pulisic particularly, I think he'll be my 2-week transfer, if you like. I think I'm going to go for the Chelsea triple up against West Ham. Absolutely insane record, as you mentioned, Will. Last 4 games, 15 shots, 13 in the box. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. Martial as well seems to have kind of revitalised this Man United attack. I read somewhere this week that with or without him, with Martial, they've had 56 shots in the box, and without him, 36. He seems to have revitalised Rashford as well, so he's getting as well, as we've seen. So I guess to answer Ryan's question, I would be going for Pulisic over Martial in the short term, simply, fixtures wise. Obviously, Man United have Villa after Sheffield United, so obviously that's a great fixture. But then after that, they have Spurs and Man City. So for me, Pulisic has the fixtures, but ultimately, what Martial's done to that team, if you can try and fit in both. And if not, he should be a very close second to Pulisic.
Very nice. Interesting as well there. I can't help but worry a little bit about Martial's injury record, and Pulisic, his game time is a slight worry, especially with, as Ryan mentioned, that Chelsea have a lot of midfielders, but then, how can Frank drop him with that type of form that he's shown? What do you reckon, Adam?
It is a tough one. I think there's pros and cons for a lot of these, and I think that's why I ultimately held off bringing them in last week. So I was looking at Pulisic, Maddison, Martial. I think when we're starting with Martial, there's a lot of stats have been posted about him, but I think we've got to be careful with Man United, because the week before they lost 1-0 to Bournemouth. They did well against Norwich and a Brighton team that are quite expansive and, gave space to be counter-attacked. If you look at some of the other matches where United have gone and teams have been a bit more difficult to break down, they haven't created loads of chances. So I'm going to wait a couple of weeks on Man United. I agree with what Andy said. Martial is probably not for me, but he could make Rashford a great option. Because Rashford was unreal the weekend. I mean, if you looking stats-wise, performance-wise, he was brilliant. But I think a lot of that came from the runs that Martial was making. He gave him so much more space. So I think Martial's a sort of player that will consistently get returns, but I don't see huge hauls from him because he doesn't typically get the bonus. He'll need a couple of returns to even be considered. And I think Rashford is probably the more explosive one there. I think the 2 Chelsea boys I'm interested in. I think Pulisic is so selfish, it's ridiculous. And, that's probably why he's doing so well in the shot stats. And I think if you like that sort of player and you really want someone who's goal hungry, go for him. I think Willian is great for assists and bonus, and it's slightly cheaper. So I'll probably go for one of them in a couple of weeks when they get the 3 home games in 4. It may come down to price. I'm not sure which one. But I think the standout one for me is Maddison. And this is quite hard for me to say because I've been anti-Maddison last season in the sense that I've always felt he flattered to deceive and that people thought he was better than he was. Not as a player from fantasy returns, but I've watched the last 3 matches that he played. He wasn't great against Southampton, but as soon as they got that free kick, you knew he would score. I think his set piece and his performance against Crystal Palace was incredible, particularly his set piece delivery. And I think he was great against Arsenal, and he's really, really passing the eye test, as does Tielemans as well. So I think, again, what's really good this season is there's a player for almost everyone. So if you haven't quite got the money to bring Maddison in. I think Tielemans is a great alternative. Same with Pulisic and Willian. So I think they're all very, very good options, and fixtures wise, they're looking good going forward. I think the only player that isn't in that list that we shouldn't discount, and I think it was mentioned by Andrew earlier, David Silva. I wouldn't rule him out at all, and I think particularly if you Man City, I think people are wrongly looking at them thinking that they're not going to score well. I don't see it. I think if anything, that Liverpool game, you saw the reaction of Sterling. There's fire there. They will come back strong. I have no doubt about it. And just because things haven't worked out for them recently, if you look at Pep's history of the last couple of years, they'll come back strong. And I think David Silva always tends to do well straight after it. It always tends to start after international breaks. So I think he could be an option as well. But there's definitely plenty within that category.
Yeah, really good roundup there. I think that for me, if I had to pick one, put my money on the post as it were, I'd probably go for Pulisic. But he's got that tricky away fixture at Man City next, so I'd probably wait a week and then bring him in for Chelsea. Got a nice run after that. But I do like Willian as well, and I do like Martial. Just, Martial's injury record does really concern me, and United have some decent fixtures coming up, but then it goes a little bit iffy. But I can see the merit in him. And Leicester assets, that there's one of those where I think that if I see a lot of good or a lot of potential fancy picks in one position from one team, then it does sort of, I don't know, I think I kind of want that sort of talisman from a team. And, Maddison, Tielemans, Perez don't really jump out at me. I think Vardy is really the talisman for Leicester. So I'm a little bit hesitant to go that way. But having said that, I think they are still really good picks. And any one of those, or indeed all three of them, could come good over the next few game weeks. So that's kind of where I am. I think it is a really difficult choice. And I think that you've certainly got to go for at least one of those. And, the good thing is if one of them doesn't come good, then you've got a lot of options within that price bracket, which I think is also important for team structure in terms of, going for one of those picks. So yeah, really good question from Ryan there, and lots of others asking similar ones. But we shall be moving on swiftly because I'm aware that we are chattering along well, which I guess as a podcast is good for. But now we're going to move on to our teams, our transfers, and our captaincy decisions. So, Adam, your team's up first there, sitting at a rank of 375,000. Not a bad position to be in. You've currently got the captaincy on Mane. Talk us through your team and briefly go over what transfers that you're considering.
I think one of the things I was looking at last week was to bring in the players like the Chelsea boys, the Leicester boys, and held off. And I think the one player I would have got rid of last week would have been Sterling. I don't think I can sell him this week. I think it would be a silly move, and I think the same for De Bruyne. So the players that I'm looking at selling at the moment is Otamendi's got to go, and probably Mount. And it hopefully I'll have the funds to do it, but I'll be looking to bring in a Leicester defender, possibly Chilwell, maybe Solanke, maybe Evans, and one of the mid-price midfielders we've just talked about. So it could be Tielemans or Maddison, because I think the fixtures of Willian and Pulisic and Martial are quite tough this week. So my aim is to triple up on Leicester, and the reason is I've just watching the last three games, the football they're playing is unreal. And I think if you look at the two goals they scored, Vardy, I think in fact both Vardy's goals in the last two games, it's no fluke. And I read an incredible article on The Athletic about how Rodgers trains his teams and sets up, and you can see it coming through. So I'm going to probably double up on Leicester. I think Chilwell can match Robertson in the next 4 or 5 game weeks and give me more money in midfield. Captain, I don't know. There's arguments for Vardy because of Duncan, Webster are out, but Brighton have been okay at home. It's going to probably be between Sterling and Mane. I'm very tempted with Mane because I don't think many people are captaining him, and I think he's the best player in the league at the moment. So that's for me. I think it's a good way of potentially getting an advantage. And I don't think Palace are as tough to break down as people think.
Good, yeah. No, I think those moves sound pretty sensible. Certainly considering similar ones myself, actually. Right, moving on then. Andrew's team. How you're setting up pretty nicely there. I like that team a lot. What are your thoughts of the upcoming game week? I see you've got David Silva in there as well. I like that pick.
Yeah, so I made the move a few weeks ago for back-to-back City home games. So I had Sterling, De Bruyne and Silva for those. It worked well in the first game, not so well in the second game. I got rid of De Bruyne last week as part of a grander plan. My joke in the pack this week potentially is the Everton left back, a home to Norwich. He'll be making his final hurrah. In terms of transfers, so I'm reasonably happy with that team for this week. Leicester away to Brighton. I don't think that's too good a fixture, so I'm not massively inclined to rush in a Leicester mid. Obviously, Chelsea away to Man City isn't either. So quite boringly, I think I'm going to save this week, but with a view to the following week, probably trying to bring in 3 transfers for a -4 to attack the fixtures then. Leicester are home, Chelsea are home as well. So basically all the players we just talked about, in the mid-price mids, and also Robertson as well for Digny there as well. I may look to take out Sterling after this game, and as I mentioned earlier, leave Silva as my only attacking coverage, because my thought there, and I don't know whether it's the right thing to do or the right thought, but looking at the fixtures, I'm probably not going to captain a City attacker for the next 6 or 7 weeks. So I'd like to spread the cash and keep Silva in there. That said, if Sterling goes and bangs in 2, 3, 4 goals this weekend, I'll reconsider. And in terms of captaincy this week, I've currently got it on Sterling, but as Adam said, there's arguments for Mane, Vardy. I do tend to like to captain a player at home, and I think City, again, I think to Adam's point, are going to absolutely fly out of the blocks. Chelsea haven't kept an away clean sheet this season either, so that's something to bear in mind. So that's my plan. It's a quite boringly save this week, but I have grand plans for the week after.
You might be tempting me into the Sterling captain there. I like those moves as well. Andy, onto your team then. Looking pretty strong there. Talk us through that.
Well, firstly, thanks for launching this podcast during my worst game, just after my worst game. Obviously dropping quite significantly down to 405k, but yeah, I'm still carrying Callum Wilson. I thought he might do something against Newcastle, nearly scored in the last minute. Harry Wilson scored. I thought it was Wilson when it popped up on my feed, but no, the wrong Wilson. So he will be leaving my team, and I'm going to be bringing in Wood. Now, we've already run through, some of his stats, and he's outperforming some players that played 4 and he's only played 2. It's absolutely incredible. So obviously he relies on McNeil's service. That will allow me to free up funds to upgrade the following week Cantwell to either Pulisic or Martial. So, you can see where my team's going. I'm going to be moving from essentially 4-3-3 or 4-4-2 to kind of a 5 in the midfield. I'm going to end up with my plan is to end up with Mane, Sterling, De Bruyne, Pulisic, and Martial. So about as powerful as it gets. And I'll have Tammy and Wood up front. In terms of captaincy this week, I mean, the other thing we've not really thought about is that Sterling seems to be getting quite a good rest. He seems to not be in contention for the England game, and that together with his nature, and he's quite fired up, obviously, together with the Man City team. I mean, if Mendy plays and you got all those factors involved, I think Sterling could be quite almost a differential, if you like, with everyone. A lot of people will be captaining Vardy this week, and then looking at the Palace game and thinking either Salah or Mane. there. So potentially Sterling could be an interesting one. I'm still kind of on the fence between Sterling and Manny for the captaincy, but I'll be shipping out Callum Wilson and then looking to upgrade Cantwell. As you can see, I've got Mount on the bench. I've kind of flipped that around and switched Mount with Conley for the moment, just simply because, I don't really trust the Man City defence. But that's why I haven't been tempted by Tomori or, I got rid of Otamendi, just because it enables the triple up at any time if you want an attack, basis the fixtures.
So you're going to be rocking without Leicester for a few more weeks then? Brave
well,
man.
Yeah, this is, I'm not ruling out Leicester players at all. I think they are, obviously hugely, massively informed. The morale must be incredible at that team. The way I've played this game, certainly in the last couple of years, has been a bit more stats orientated. And I'm not saying they're going to regress. It's just simply either their stats have to increase or their form has to decrease. It might well be the stats increase and then the points production will be maintained, or they start to progress. So by no means am I ruling them out. I think, Maddison, Vardy, Vardy's been smashing it, as has Maddison and even Soyuncu recently. So, I'm not ruling them out, but the sort of team structure I'm aiming for with that firepower midfield doesn't really give you a lot of options. For me, Trent is a season keeper. He's created 9 big chances all season, which is second only to De Bruyne. That sort of thing kind of goes under the radar, but it's not just his set piece and taking and the fact that he plays for Liverpool. It's also that he's almost like I treat him like a kind of midfielder, if you like. So really, my team structure with the power 5 in midfield doesn't really allow for Vardy or Leicester assets in the short term, but I'm not ruling them out.
Good, yeah. Do you know? I think you and Andrew may have convinced me into Sterling captaincy. To be honest, the more I think about it, the more I might be going that way. I've currently got it on Salah, but I think I might be going towards Sterling. In terms of my transfers and captaincy, as I said, Sterling probably leaning towards that way to the captaincy just from this podcast now, but that's a little bit up in the air. In terms of transfers, again, it's very much up in the air. I'm not going to go into detail because I do that in my regular YouTube video, but I think Mount is likely to go out, as is potentially one of the City guys, potentially De Bruyne. I'm hesitant to sort of nail down who I'm going to bring in. I do want Pulisic, but I recognise that this is not the game week to bring him in, so that gives me a little bit of a quandary. I'm also potentially want to, get rid of Maguire potentially for a Leicester defender. So there are a few different options there, but I'm very much going to wait and see, especially with, Salah, there's room he's got a potential knock. So I'm going to wait and see on the press conferences on that. And yeah, there's a lot up in the air, and I'm far from making a decision. I think it's going to be a really, really important decision because it could affect how the rest of the season goes, to be honest. So lots of time to think about it before the international break. We're recording this on the Wednesday in the first game week of the international break. So yeah, lots of thinking to do, but I'd like to get rid of Mount. I'm probably going to get rid of De Bruyne. I might take a hit and also take out a defender, but I'm really not sure at the moment. I don't know what you guys, any thoughts on my team?
I don't think you're too badly set up. I actually think you made a really good point there. I think it's when you were talking about the fixtures, like the game that Pulisic has got, that Martial's got quite a tough game. I'd be tempted to take a transfer into the next game week personally, because the week that's just gone had like loads of great fixtures, and I think the following week you've got Chelsea at home to West Ham, is it?
Yeah, so
Leicester have got a home game, so I'd be tempted to make one transfer and roll 2 over.
I should say I've got 2 transfers, so take one and then roll the other 2
for the good fixtures coming up.
Good fixtures.
Yeah, that's what I would personally do. But obviously, you don't know what's going to happen with the internationals, do you? So
yeah, I think it's a little bit of a wait and see, but I do see the logic in that. Right, I think that is it for the podcast, gents. So thank you all very, very much for being on. Can you tell us where we can find you on social media? Adam, you mentioned your handle. Just give the listeners and the viewers another shout out for that.
Yeah, so it's HOPCROFT13.
And Andrew?
Mine is @Fergie222.
Andy, where can the viewers and listeners find you?
Handle is at FPL Fantasy Guide.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all very, very much for being on. If this is the first time you're listening on one of the podcast versions, then please give us a rating on iTunes or your other podcast provider. Otherwise, hit the like button and subscribe on YouTube.